dark, kindle the spark in me. Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Flicker. I'm modeling for you today one of my most forthright and earnest t-shirts I own. Today's episode of Flicker maybe comes out of this sentence. Honestly, I'm probably part of the problem. I wish I could always wear this kind of honesty on the outside of me, but most of the time I just have to do the harder work of being honest with myself on the inside, which is exactly where our conversation picks up today as we take a look at the next piece of the Sermon on the Mount. We said last time we're beginning to enter this next phase of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus does this repeated pattern. He'll say, "You've heard that it was said to people of old, such and such," and then he says, "But I say to you," and he either sharpens the old commandment, or he changes, or he reinterprets, or in some cases he'll do things that sound like he blows apart the old conventional wisdom. So as we go along here, we're going to start with Jesus taking commandments that every good first century Jewish person knew, and how Jesus says, you know what this is really all about? It goes even deeper than just the surface, and it's going to mean that even if we think we're decent at following the big basic rules, there's something deeper inside that has gone wrong in all of us, and honestly, each of us is probably part of the problem. So, for example, after this sort of overview we talked about last time, Jesus goes on to say, "You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times," in other words, this is out of the Torah, out of the books of Moses, "You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, that if you are angry or wrathful with a brother or sister, you'll be liable to judgment. If you insult a brother or sister, you'll be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you'll be liable to the hell of fire. So, when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift." Did you hear what Jesus said? Jesus took one of the 10 commandments, right? I mean, like, these are the things that people engrave on monuments when you make kids memorize at some point in their Sunday school years. And a core central tenet of, like, virtually every civilization is no murder. And Jesus goes, yeah, the commandment's no murder, but let me tell you what it's really about. And it goes deeper. Jesus seems to think we're not just off the hook if I haven't stopped somebody's heart from beating directly, but if I've let hatred take hold of me, already things are broken between me and a neighbor. If I've allowed pride or arrogance or hatred of somebody else to allow me to treat somebody else uncivilly, to treat somebody else disrespectfully, as less than, I've already done something to disrespect, to mar the image of God in which they are created. Jesus says in that regard, all of us, honestly, are part of the problem. See, I mean, like, among the 10 commandments, this is one of those ones that most of us could probably go, yeah, I can totally keep that when I promise not to murder anybody, and I'll be fine. And here Jesus says, you know what, it's not even directly if you were the one holding the gun, or you were the one swinging the sword or the axe or whatever, but wherever we've allowed hatred, wherever we've allowed even apathy, wherever we've allowed indifference, wherever we've allowed bitterness, simply to let hatred poison the way we talk to each other, relate to other people, even down to things like petty insults, right? It's interesting. Like, we live in a culture that is so obsessed with, but I have the right to be mean, don't I? I have the right to be a jerk. I have the right to say whatever I want to say to whomever I want to say it, and you can't stop me. Man, that's not the way Jesus thinks. Jesus goes, no. If you're part of the people of God, that's not how we operate. So even if it's not a crime to insult somebody, that's not how we do things in this family. And because so often we do allow hate to infect the way we speak to other people, to allow hate to color the way we view people, to allow hate to make us indifferent or just not care when somebody else is suffering, Jesus says all of us are part of the problem. Now, all of this might sound like terrible bad news, and if this is all we had from Jesus, it would just be, man, we're all terrible messes. There's more to be said, and of course, part of the Christian faith is the idea that Jesus has come that diagnoses all that's wrong with us so that we can be pulled out of these ways that we are part of the problem. But first, maybe we need to take that honest look. I think a lot of times, all of us live our day-to-day life thinking, if I do a decent enough job of following the rules, I'm in the clear. I get my heaven points. I get to go to heaven when I die. And as a bonus, I get to look down on all the other people I don't think are doing a good enough job. I'm not breaking any commandments, but I'm going to look down on you because you did something that stepped a toe out of line. Man, are we good at that. And we secretly love it. And Jesus calls us on it and says, every time I let hatred, every time I let that pettiness, every time I let that discord get in my heart toward other people around me, I've already broken a relationship, and I'm in need of someone who can help me put things back. Honestly, each of us is probably part of the problem. And part of what it is to follow Jesus is to stare that reality down so that then there can be transformation. And the ways I've grown comfortable with hating you, the ways I've grown comfortable with being rotten to others, whether it's an individual or just someone I don't like or someone whose politics are different than mine or someone who always posts terrible things on social media or a whole group of people, whatever the ways we've learned to hate and think it's okay, Jesus says, no, that's not okay. It never was. It's as severe a bad infraction as murder is. And what Jesus has come to do, now that he's diagnosed us, is to say, here's a new way of living that isn't grounded in, I have to hate you to get by, or I have to look down on you. We're pulled into something new. So maybe some days the most honest thing I can say about me is I'm part of the problem. But Jesus hasn't given up on me. And he hasn't given up on any of us, so that it is possible we could be pulled out, transformed. The old word for it is to repent, but to change our old ways of living, the ways we've gotten used to hatred, so we don't have to do that anymore. Jesus doesn't leave us with just, well, you're wearing an honest shirt, that's all I care about. Jesus insists on going all the way down. But let's let that happen in the rest of this day, and then we'll pick up with more conversation next time here on Flickr. Thanks for watching.